Hi everyone, Savannah here, and today we're going to be drawing this watering can. You can grab everything needed for this tutorial in the description down below. It is for free on my Patreon. My brushes are also free for you to use, so let's jump in. The very first thing that we always do in these videos is to change the background color. So select your layer, click that background layer, and we're going to do this lightish blue color to the bottom left of your color palette. And now make a new layer. Drag that below the outline layer that I have for you there. And we're going to start coloring in this watering can. You can select any of the colors you want. I'm going to start with this dark or gray color, and I'm going to use my circle brush and just start outlining the shape of this watering can. And now that we have the general shape, one thing I like to do is just to check it without the outline. So go ahead and uncheck the outline in the layers tab and then take a look at your shape. If it's how you want it, great. Then you can start moving on and filling it in. If not, this is where you want to make those adjustments, and then we can work on adding the other colors, the highlights, lowlights, add more color to this after that. And with Procreate, you can typically drop fill in colors. However, the way that my brushes work, they have a little bit of that rigid edge texture. And so when you drop it in, you will have a little bit of gaps. And so that's why I usually just fill this in by hand. I don't drag and drop the color into the space. You can if you want, just know that you'll have to go around the edges to make sure that there is no white or the background color bleeding through to the foreground, because that will happen with these brushes. And once we have that general shape filled in, we are going to work on adding details to this. And so turn that outline layer back on so you can see where these details are going in. Add a new layer and select one of these darker blue colors where you're going to start adding in some shadows. And then for that layer, you want to make it clippy mask What that's going to do is as you're adding in details to that layer, that clipping mask layer, it's going to confine it to the shape below it. So the shape is the watering can, and this is how we can add different layers. We can add different colors. You could do highlights on one layer and then the shadows in a different layer if you want to do it that way. But just know that you can add multiple different layers, turn them on and off, tweak them without affecting that bottom layer. So that's what we're doing here. We're doing the clippy mask. I'm working on this portion of the watering can on that new layer, and it, as you can see, is staying within the shape of that watering can. And I am still using the circle brush for this. I haven't switched over to the blend brush quite yet. I'm just adding in a lot of the different colors that I'll be using, and then I'll go back through and use that circle blend brush to blend this out. The way I'm having my light come, it's the top right direction. So I'm going to add a little bit more lightness to the rim here of the spout because that's where the light will be coming from. So I'm just going back through, I'm selecting some lighter colors, that base color that we used to fill in the watering can on that first layer there. I'm bringing that back in just to give it a little bit more of that lightness, like the light is shining on the rim. And now I am going to blend some of this together. So again, use that circle blend brush. I picked up that base color again just to blend this out a little bit, and I'll be doing this throughout as we're coloring in the watering can. And I'm just grabbing different colors to build up on this. The watering can is very shiny and reflective, at least the watering can that I am doing. So I want to pull in a lot of these different vibrant colors. So that's why I'm pulling in yellow, I'm pulling in orange, I'm pulling in this lighter blue color, and then I'll blend it out, adding more layers or building up more onto these, the same layer, but building up more of these colors on top of each other as to give it a reflective surface, and then blend it out as I go. And I am alternating between a harder press and a lighter press. This brush is pressure sensitive, and so when you press lightly with the Apple Pencil, it's going to have less pigment. It's going to still have more of that base color underneath of it. When you press harder, it's going to pull more of the new color into that space, and so I'm just kind of alternating it to get it to feel how I want it to look and feel. And so just know that as you're working with these brushes, if you want it to be a little bit lighter, you could go with a lighter press. If you want, combination, you can kind of alternate between the two. As you can see here, I went a little too heavy-handed with that blue. I want it to be a little bit softer, and so I undid that. To undo, you tap the screen with 2 fingers, and I'm going in with a lighter pressure touch here so that it's not bringing in too much pigment. And I'm selecting a slightly darker color here. I don't have anything too dark in that color palette. And so if you want to go darker, you can still do that color wheel. I'm going a little bit darker here to add the spot where the water comes out, and just adding in these dots here. I might tweak them a little bit just to make it look a little bit better. Again, you could check your work as you're going along by unchecking that outline layer and see if it's looking how you want it to look. You can modify, you can tweak it. Again, the outline layer is just as a guideline. You don't have to follow it verbatim, but it is there for you just to have a starting point. And then I'm just kind of tracing the inner line here. It will be a little bit darker, the shadow area, and so I'm just kind of tracing this to give it a little bit more definition. And if you want to use any of the colors already on your drawing, you could just hold your finger down on the color that you want to select. The color picker will grab that, and then you can use that color going forward. You still can use the color palette. This comes in handy though if you want to find a color that's in between. So as you're blending, between this darker blue and maybe a lighter color, then you can pick a color that blended in between and then blend it out even more seamlessly. And so it comes in handy for that kind of situation, or in general, if you don't want to go into your color palette, you could just select one of the colors that's already on there and grab it, and you can use that going forward. And feel free to tweak this drawing however you want. You don't have to do the same lighting area that I'm doing. You'll have to do the highlights and shadows where I'm putting them. This is up to you and your interpretation. This is just how I'm doing it for this video or how I'm doing it for this drawing. Again, you don't have to follow it verbatim, but you can if you want. And I'm going in here with this light gray, almost white color to add more detail to make it appear shiny on this area here. So just kind of doing scratch kind of lines, just little rough lines. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can do them smoother if you want, but I'm just kind of going in roughly here on the watering can. And now I'm going to work on the main part of the watering can here. I'm going to pull in similar to how we did in the earlier steps of these various different colors. So I'm going to add some yellow. I'm going to add some orange to this to make it a little bit more colorful, a little more bright. And then we will add details on top. So it will look similar to what we just worked on, but I'm adding these initially first as that base layer. And I just kept on the circle blend brush here. You can switch it back to the circle brush if you want to, like we did earlier, but I'm just going in with the circle blend brush and I'll just blend it all out as I go, adding some more darker colors. Again, my light source is coming from the top right, so this area is going to be a little bit darker as opposed to when you move more to the right. And you'll see me changing the size of the brushes throughout these videos. I just kind of go based on what's needed for that shape in that area, but you can have them as a set. There's a way to save them. I could show you in a different tutorial, but there's a way you can save it. So if you want a specific size for the brush, let's say you use a certain size for smaller details, you want to save that, or you use a size for larger details, you can save that. You can change it by percentage. So I just do it based on what's needed for the particular image. But again, if you want to have a specific size that you use for both large and small, you can definitely set those as well. I'm just gonna add a few highlights here. It is going a little bit brighter here, so I'll tone it down a little bit, but I just want it to be defined that this is something that is sticking out a little bit on the side of the watering can here. And now I'm going to add more color to this watering can. I'm going to do a lighter blue color and I'm going to add it to the right side. Again, my light source is coming from the right, so it's going to be much lighter than it is to the left. So I'm going to start adding in some lighter color here and then we'll work on blending all this out. So one thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually add a lighter blue color, which seems abnormal because again, if with the light source coming from the top right, I would want this to be darker, but I am going to go back over with this darker blue color. Again, I'm still on that blend brush, and so if I lightly press over it, it's going to blend it, but still kind of pull up a lighter color. I want to kind of define the space a little bit, so I'm pulling in a lighter undertone so that you can kind of see the definition a little bit better. And I am pulling a little bit of that darker color in from the earlier area that we just did the spout. So that's going to help kind of define the space a little bit in that shadow. So I'm pulling that darker color in and then I'll kind of blend it out a little bit. And again, just make sure you're constantly kind of turning that outline layer on and off so you can see how your work is looking compared to the outline layer. You can also turn the layer down, the opacity on the layer down if you want, and still have that outline layer shown, but I like just having it turned off and on as I'm working through it so I could see, are my lines looking correct to me? Is everything looking proportionate to each other versus what it looks like in the outline. And if it is, then great, I can move on to that next section, but it's really helpful to see it without that outline to see how your particular image is coming along. And I am doing a new layer now to do these lines here on the watering can. I'm using the darkest color, but I am going to go through and change that color so it's not completely dark all the way through, because again, the lighting is going to hit that differently as well. And so I'm just using the darker color just so I can see the lines more clearly, and then I'll go through and add different colors on top of it. Now, this watering can is looking a little too smooth for me. I want it to be a little bit more jagged, so I'm kind of color picking colors from the watering can. I'm making my brush a little bit larger. I'm just kind of adding some kind of like scratch-ish marks to it just to roughen it up again, similar to what we did on the spout. And so I'm just kind of grabbing different colors in the area, just adding some rough lines here and there. It's going to make it look a little bit more rugged, but it's going to blend still nicely because you are pulling colors that are in that area. And so it's going to give it that roughness, but not too much. It's not going to be too stark across those different colors. And now we're going to work on the top part here of the watering can. So we're going to do a new layer, grab that circle brush. We're going to start filling in the top here, just outlining the darker section. I'm going to make this part the darker section because that's what's going into the watering can. To make that straight line, so I just did a straight line, you drag a line across the page, hold it there for a second, and then it will straighten that line. So if you're not good at making straight lines, I am definitely not good at that. Just draw the straight line, hold it for a second before lifting your Apple Pencil. It will adjust that to a straight line for you. And then you can kind of move it around while keeping your Apple Pencil still on the screen. You can move it around to where you want it and adjust it from there. And then we're going to start filling in more of this area. This is in the shadows, so I'm going to make this the darker blue. We'll lighten it up a little bit, adding color on top of it. But right now I'm just kind of doing the larger shapes of these areas and then adding details on top. Usually if you start with larger shapes, it's much easier to see the vision come to life. If you do try to do all the details right at the beginning, it's harder to see. And so start with the bigger shapes and work your way to smaller from there. And then just using that circle blend brush, we're just going to blend these two colors in. And I'm going to add a slightly lighter color here and blend it down. There's a little bit of light that would come in at the top, and then it goes darker as you go deeper into the can. And so I'm just going to add a little bit of lighter colors to the top and then go darker towards the bottom here. And now let's go ahead and make a new layer. We're going to make this clippy mask as well. So most of these layers are clippy masks. We're going to grab that lighter blue color and we're going to work on the top part of this handle here. It is going to be lighter than the underside. So we're going to start with that lighter blue color first. And now we're going to work on the handle to the right. One thing to know is if you add a layer between layers that are clippy mask to that bottom layer, it will make this one a clippy mask as well. So you don't have to click in to every single layer and make it a clippy mask. That's only when you add a new layer to the top of what's already there. So this one is going to be above the layer that we did for the main part of the watering can, but below the top handle that we have here. So that's why it defaulted to a clippy mask, because it's between two layers that are already marked as clippy masks. And now we're going to do another new layer. We're going to grab a lighter color and we're going to start working on the rim of this watering can. I like to have this on a new layer because then I can add in those details. I can add highlights, shadows, everything that I need as we work across, because again, this is also going to have some variation from the light source. And so I don't want this to be on that layer that we have below or any of the other layers. I want it on its own so I can work on adding shadows to this specific section. sometimes you'll have stray drawings, especially if you're left-handed, you'll have stray lines on the left side of your things. That's what you see here. I have some white mark somewhere on my watering can, so I'm just trying to erase it and clear that up before I move on to the next step. It happens. You can get one of those gloves to put on your hand. I don't typically use those. You can if you want. It helps it from when you have your hand resting on it, helps from drawing accidentally with the palm of your hand elsewhere on your screen, so you can use that if you want, but I don't typically use that, so that's why I kind of have these random drawings here and there throughout these videos. And I'm just touching up the handle here on the watering can just because it looked a little bit like it was shorter in certain sections, so I'm just touching this up before going in, alpha locking it, and adding details. Now I'm going to add the other side here of the top of the watering can. You can do this as a new layer. I just did this on the same layer as the area that's darker here, but feel free if you want to do a new layer on top of that, you're more than welcome to. I'm going in with the circle blend brush because I still want to pick up a little bit of that color underneath, and then we'll add more details. So that's what I'm doing here, just adding a little bit of this light blue color here, adding more of that lightness because again, the light will be hitting this more than a lot of the other areas of the watering can, so I want to be much lighter than the other areas. And then I am adding shadow here from the handle. You will have a little bit of shadow, so I'm going in with a very light touch because again, there's still a lot of lightness hitting this area, so I don't want it to be so stark and so dark like we have on the left side here of the watering can. And now we'll work on the rim here of the watering can. I grabbed this blue color and just kind of going around the edge. I don't want it to be quite so white, and so that's why I'm kind of going in with the blue. And then we'll add some layers. There's going to be some shadows here and there throughout with the rim, and so we're going to add some shadows. We're going to add some highlights as well just to make it not look so stark and blend it in a little bit better. Now let's go ahead and work on the handle. The inside of the handle is going to be darker as opposed to the top of it, mainly because that's the furthest point away from that light source. And so let's add some shadows there. Then we'll add some texture to the top part as well. And I'm just adding a little bit more texture here. I'm doing this darker blue color on the inside as if the handle has a little bit of a texture to it, and I'm putting a little bit on top as well. We'll do this to the handle on the top as well so that they match, but I just want to add a little bit more variation, a little bit more detail to the section. And now we'll work on the top handle here on the lighter section. Every other area with this is good. It's just this light part that we haven't touched yet. So we're going to add some color variation. Make sure you have this layer on alpha lock. As you can see, I went outside lines because I didn't have it on alpha lock. So just make sure you're putting all the layers that you're adding detail to on alpha lock as you're working on those finer details. Then it won't go outside lines. And you don't have to be perfect with these lines. I'm not. I'm just kind of doing these lines roughly. I don't want them to be super perfect. This is kind of the art style I'm going for with this watering can. But if the art style you're going for is more straight lines, things like that, then you can make them a little bit more clean. But I'm going a little bit rough with my lines here because, again, that's just kind of the art style I took with this. And I'm just going to go through and add some final details, final touches, just kind of clean things up a little bit where I think that it needs some more help. And then we will finish with the lines that we talked about earlier, the lines on the watering can itself. We're going to add a little bit of color variation there so it's not just all the same color. It doesn't look natural to the eye. So we'll add some lighter colors to that as if the light source is reflecting on it. And again, make sure you're alpha locking that layer. Make sure you're on that circle blend brush and just grab one of the lighter colors. I'm using the lighter blue here and just adding some lightness to the right side here. I'll go in and add some even lighter, maybe more the white color here further to the right, because that's again where that light is hitting, and that gives it a little bit more variation, makes it look like it blends more realistic in a sense. And then doing the same thing we did on the spout, I'm adding some white highlight to make it look like it's a little bit more shiny. Again, I'm going in with this as a rough hand, not making it perfect straight lines or anything like that. I'm just adding this texture. I think it looks good here. You can go with it however you want to go. Again, this is just the style that I'm going with. And now let's go ahead and add a new layer, bring it all the way down below all of the layers that we've worked on. Let's add the shadow for the watering can. So we'll go into our color palette, we'll pick this dark grayish purple color and use that as the shadow. And then the final touches that we'll do is add in these drops of water at the end. And I always like to do a Gaussian blur on the shadow, so if you want to do that, you absolutely can. Just click into that Gaussian blur, you drag your pencil and slide it to the right, and that's going to change the amount that you want to use. I usually go around 7%. That's just my preference, but you can adjust it to what you like. Now I'm going to add a little bit more texture to the background, so I added a new layer here. I'm using that square blend brush. Just grabbing a lighter white color. I'm adding more lightness to the right side here and blending it out. It's a little hard to see. It's a little bright against the screen here, but I'm just kind of blending it out with that base color just to, again, give it a little bit more texture for this background. And then I'm going to take this darker color, same thing that we did with the white, and I'm going to go in this upper area and add more color variation, a little bit darker to this section. Not much, I still want it to be somewhat light, but I'm going in with that color just to add some texture. Now we're going to work on the water droplets. So do a new layer, grab that circle brush and grab a lighter color and just start filling in the outline. For now, we'll come back and add detail and make them look more realistic and more like water in a second. Now that they are filled in, I'm going to start adding detail. I do turn the opacity of this layer down a little bit. So you just click that in and you drag that slider over to the left. I did around 50%. And then we're going to do the soft brush. We're going to erase some of the center of these water droplets. That's going to make it look more clear as if it is actually water. So I'm just going in on the inside. I'll go a little bit closer to the edge in some areas, not all the way on all of the areas, but some of them you can go a little bit closer to the edge. Just make sure you have a little bit of lightness still around the edge in some areas. That's what's going to make it look a little bit more realistic, because the light touches these water droplets in different ways, and so we are kind of trying to imitate that. So just erase a little bit of these centers as I'm doing here, and then we'll add some more depth to them. Now we're going to grab this dark blue color. Make sure your brush is on circle blend. It's going to make it blend a little bit nicer. But we're going to start adding some shadows to these water droplets, just a little bit here and there. You can kind of mess around with where that placement looks. This is just how I'm working through it. And then we'll add a couple more finishing touches after this. And then I'm going to add a new layer and move that underneath the water, and I'm going to add shadows. So I'm using the same brush, same color, and I'm just kind of outlining different areas of where the water droplets would have shadow from them being out of that light source. And so just go through very lightly. You don't have to go too heavy here, but we're going to add a little bit of shadow to make them look like they are resting on the ground here. And then one of the final touches is we're going to add some shine to these. So grab that lighter color and just add some spots here and there on our water droplets. It would be more reflective towards the right side. So the ones that are dripping down from the nozzle here would be more reflective on the right. And the ones that are on the ground there are varied, in the shape. And so just add the white droplets where you want. And with that, our drawing is done. Thank you everyone for following along with me today. I really had fun doing this watering can, and I hope you did too. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. I do have other videos if you want to follow along. Otherwise, I will see everybody in the next video.